across the board.
That Delta FRR just a couple of days ago that was held, and we had a press conference yesterday, and the team reported out that everything is moving forward. You're talking about how hard the team worked. They deserved a little time off, so you guys took Memorial Day weekend to kind of recharge a little bit.
Yes, we did. We allowed some the folks to go and take a little bit of a break, have a barbecue if they needed to, and get a little bit of a recharge, as you said, to be able to get back into and have a clear mind and be able to get back into the procedures for this week.
Further proof that you are indeed a human being. These are human people that are working on all this. I just got to flash this really quick. This is Dana Hutcherson on a local community magazine in our city. And here she is with her husband, Jeremy, and her 2 dogs, her 2 labs. I sat down to my dining room table. My wife had this sitting on, and I said, "Well, look at this. This is the woman I'm interviewing today for the launch broadcast." Learned some interesting things about you, Dana. You like to, obviously travel and do fun water sports all around Florida. And it also says here that you're an introvert. What?
Yes, I am very much so an introvert, but you wouldn't know it, I guess, some days.
Yeah.
But yes, that was really a surprise to get to see that and have that opportunity, being featured on Cocoa Beach Living.
Cocoa Beach's own Dana Hutcherson, Deputy Program Manager for CCP. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Continued good luck on the team working towards launch.
Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, we'll send it back to you.
We have teams monitoring today's launch operations here in Florida as well as in Houston. In the room right next to Leroy, you have ULA's Dylan Rice and Boeing's Lauren Brennicky, who have been monitoring operations with the rocket and the spacecraft for the last 3 hours.
Yeah, Dia, we've actually been monitoring them close the hatch and start the pressurization process. As you've seen there on your screen, I want to give you a little bit of perspective on how this works, and it's kind of interesting what the astronauts will experience sitting in there. It's a lot like when you feel a pressure change when you're in an aircraft. So their ears will pop, and the whole process, doesn't take very long. It just takes a couple of minutes. But our team is checking about half a dozen valves and more than 60 seals. So things like windows and hatches and vestibules. And they will let the spacecraft sit for about 10 minutes while they check. You could think of this as like inflating a balloon. When you start to inflate a balloon, you'd be able to tell pretty quickly if there was any kind of a leak where the air would be coming back out of it. So very similar process here, and that's what the team is going through. If you are just joining us, we are just under 1 hour till launch time. A couple of hours ago, our teams, the Boeing teams, were able to confirm that the leak rate remains acceptable. If you've been following along with us this week, you may have heard about the helium leak that we had, but we know now the leak rate remains acceptable. And in fact, our teams even said that it looks better than before. So all good news. And Dylan, Atlas really has been all over the solar system. Today's a little different because we have crew on board.
Well, that's right, Lauren. And so, we really are thrilled to have Butch and Sonny on board, and thrilled to be a part of this program as we put Atlas back in service for human space flight. This, on the one hand, we have some really thoroughly established processes and procedures that we've used for missions to the sun, the moon, Mars, and we're using those today. But this countdown really is unlike anything we've done before, and so we're just absolutely thrilled to be a part of it. We remain in our final built-in hold now as we continue to prepare for liftoff, but there are still a few things ahead of us today. As you talked about, the blue team is on the pad while that leak check is going on. They're continuing their preps to clear out. Once we do get the area clear, we'll be preparing the vehicle's propulsion and hydraulic systems for launch. We'll also be getting some data and loading that into the flight computer that will help Atlas and Centaur steer through the upper level winds as we pierce the atmosphere. You'll also be hearing some comm checks between the Chief Launch Conductor Doug Lebo and the Starliner crew and Houston as well. As we get all those things will take us closer and closer to our launch opportunity today, coming up at 12:25 and 40 seconds. And of course, the one big visual cue that you will get that we're moving right along will be retraction of that big crew access arm. So that's going to be coming up here in just a little over 40 minutes. A little under 40 minutes, I should say. But yeah, the big crew access arm will retract, and at that point we'll be very close to launch.
And it's really important that the crew cleans everything up.
On channel 1. Go FTS. Operation 55, step 270, FTS open loop test is complete. Roger.
All right. All right, we just heard that leak check is complete. Again, we are just under 1 hour. We're about 56, 57 minutes right now away from launch. The cabin leak check is complete, and we are moving forward nominally. Feeling like a great day to go to space, Dylan.
I agree. Let's do it.
Megan, we will check back in with you in just a little bit. Back over to you guys.
Well said, Dylan. Let's do it. And actually, why don't we take the time now to take another look at the crew making history with this test flight. You see Commander Butch Wilmore closest to the screen here, corner right. Now, Commander Butch Wilmore, NASA astronaut and retired U.S. Navy captain, was raised in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, is married to Deanna Wilmore, and they have 2 daughters. As a naval pilot, Butch racked up more than 8,000 flight hours and 663 carrier landings, all in tactical jet aircraft. He completed 4 operational deployments supporting missions like Operation Desert Storm. Before his selection to NASA, Wilmore was on exchange to the Air Force as a flight test instructor at the Air Force Tests Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Butch is a veteran of 2 space flights as a pilot on Space Shuttle Atlantis in 2009, and then in 2014 he served as flight engineer for Expedition 41. And so far, Wilmore has spent 178 days in space and performed 4 spacewalks. This flight test will be his 3rd mission to the ISS.
And Sunny Williams, CFT's pilot and a retired U.S. Navy captain. NASA selected her as an astronaut in 1998, just 2 years before Butch. This will be Sunny's 3rd mission to space, making her the first woman on a test flight of an orbital spacecraft. Her first trip to the ISS launched in 2006. She served as flight engineer for Expeditions 14-15. She then returned to the orbiting lab in 2012 and was commander of Expedition 33. Sunny has more than 50 hours of spacewalk time, the 2nd most cumulative time by a female astronaut. So far, she has spent 322 days in space. Before NASA, Sunny was a former naval test pilot and instructor, logging more than 3,000 flight hours in more than 30 different aircraft. Williams grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, and is married to Michael Williams.
Starliner at Houston on 1. Good pressure. The side hatch is being configured now. Audible noises may be heard.
Standing by, thanks.
She enjoys hanging out with her dogs, working out, hiking and camping, as well as working on cars and houses.
What do these 2 not do, Mike?
No, they are some of NASA's finest, and were chosen to fly on this mission so that we can get Starliner certified and fly more Starliners to the space station in the future.
How does it feel, seeing your friends who you've trained alongside with so many years now? How does it feel to see them about 53 minutes to launch?
I am so proud of my friends. I've been working with Butch and Sunny for, as like Butch likes to say, half a decade, 5 years or so, and we're as you can see today, and all the work as we were getting ready to launch today, how much Butch and Sunny, as well as we appreciate the whole team that we're part of. And Butch and Sunny have really expressed their gratitude to everyone and try to include the team as we all go forward on this mission. And so I'm super proud of them, and I'm a little envious, but I'm really happy for them to be this close to flight. 53 minutes to go.
You're not the only astronaut that says that. It's okay.
As the crew aboard Starliner prepares to launch to the space station, let's take a look at what's in store for them, for Sunny and Butch, while on this mission.
The mission of the Commercial Crew Program is to provide transportation for astronauts to the International Space Station.
Multiple providers provide you redundancy. Redundancy is important, as we know. In our systems, we have redundant systems.
But actually, more importantly, it's providing the aerospace workforce the opportunity to test out new ideas, new technologies, and work them into spacecraft. Butch and I are the first two to fly the Starliner, so this flight will be a crew flight test, so there'll only be two on board. We're going to fly it up to the space station, dock it, and test it all out, and then come back home.
Everything's new. The procedures are new. We have procedures now that we didn't have a year ago because we've learned as the process has gone forward.
We've had 2 test flights uncrewed previously, but this will be the first time we're putting people on it.
We're test pilots, and so we're going to be testing the spacecraft in all aspects of the flight, from launch, on orbit, all the way to entry and landing.
We're testing out the environmental control system, we're testing out the manual flying of the spacecraft. Then while we're docked to the space station, we have a bunch of tasks to make sure that the spacecraft can act as a lifeboat. Just in case anything bad goes on the International Space Station, the crew on board can come to the Starliner and make sure that they're okay.
This has a mode where we call it backup mode, which is your get home mode, if you will. We can, without any communication at all, we can still effect a return to Earth, do a deorbit burn, and hit the point where we're trying to land, even without our computers. You know, that old mantra, failure is not an option, because it's a very dynamic thing we do flying in space, and it's not very forgiving, and we know that, and that's why we have these multiple systems and multiple redundant capabilities, because human life is special and we want to preserve it at all costs.
I think exploration is just in the human heart. Butch, he describes himself as the first thing he said as a kid was why, and I think that's in all of us. Maybe we don't verbalize it, but we all ask why, and that's what exploration is. It's that next step of why. So why not go back to the moon? Why not try to live on the moon? It seems like a natural stepping stone to the next thing, Mars, which just calls us. Like, why is that planet there? What is the future of that planet? What is the future of our planet? And to be able to take these next steps in exploration, we're going to start answering those questions.
We stand on the pinnacle. This is kind of where everything, integration, everything comes together, which is where Sonny and I sit. And this is just a part of the ongoing process of growing and expounding our knowledge and our understanding of all things for the benefit of mankind.
I am Sonny Williams, and I am ready to fly NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test.
I'm Butch Wilmore, and I am ready to fly NASA's Boeing Crew Flight Test.
And we are ready to see them fly as well. You know, we've been inviting our viewers, you guys, to reach out to us on social media and ask us any questions you might have about this historic flight test. And one that we've been seeing a lot is, you know, why are teams still launching while there is a helium leak on the Starliner spacecraft? Mike, can you address that?
No, that's a really good question, and we spent a whole week and a half getting ready to be able to answer that to ourselves and to Butch and Sonny, saying, why is this okay, or how is this okay, or should we take the spacecraft back and replace it? Well, we looked at not just the data that we've seen, but also the what could happen in the worst case, and then what could happen even worse than that. And at every point, and because Starliner, you heard what Butch said on the overview there, was that Starliner has a lot of redundant systems. So even if we were to, if that leak were to get bigger, and it hasn't, but if it were to get bigger, it could get a lot bigger, and we'd still be okay. And even if it leaked out the entire bottle of helium for that manifold, we could still fly back and land safely in the desert in Southwest United States. So NASA looked at what the risks were, and working with the crew, and the crew office said, hey, this is not ideal. We don't like this. But this is a test flight, and we were able to manage this risk and accept this risk. And it's a really tiny leak. We will be okay. And if it isn't, here's what we do. And we spent a lot of time in the simulators and writing procedures just in case. Just like we saw a little bit earlier, United Launch Alliance, they had a small anomaly. They said, all right, here's our alternate procedures. Let's run through it. And they went through it methodically. We do the same thing on board. So we have everything ready just in case.
Yeah, just for more context, you know, as you said, this is a very small leak. Starliner could handle 4 more leaks, or this one leak growing by 100 times its current size before needing to be managed in flight. And actually, other spacecraft like Shuttle have launched with similar helium leaks in the past. Also important to note, teams continue to watch and monitor this leak to make sure that it's not growing. And as we've said, it has not grown in the time that they've first detected this leak. So again, that's why the decision is being made to fly, and that's why we continue to march towards our instantaneous launch opportunity at 12:25 and 40 seconds Eastern Time. Meanwhile, inside Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, folks there are keeping a close eye on launch, continue to do so. Here's NASA's Brandy Dean and Boeing's Jim May.
Thanks, Megan. Welcome back to the Starliner Flight Control Room in Mission Control Houston, where the flight control team is continuing to follow along with all the activities going on in Florida now that we are 46 minutes away from today's launch. Once Starliner gets off the pad, Jim and I will be with you through Ascent, giving you play-by-play and expanding on the calls that you'll hear Capcom Joshua Kutrick making to Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams on board.
There are a number of major milestones you want to keep an eye out for during Starliner's climb to orbit. The first call that you'll hear from Starliner's crew is roll program, coming from Commander Wilmore, indicating that Starliner is rolling into the right orientation for ascent and orbit operations. Then about 45 seconds into the flight, the crew and Starliner will reach max Q, which is the maximum dynamic pressure that they will experience during ascent, and that happens just before they reach Mach 1.
Then a minute and 35 seconds into flight, the solid rocket boosters that give Starliner its first major push into orbit will have used up all of their fuel. Starliner will hold on to them for a little more than a minute after that and then jettison the boosters before second stage takes over and take Starliner away the rest of the way.
Starliner will actually reach orbit around 11 minutes and 58 seconds into flight, at which that point the Centaur main engine will cut off. Starliner and its crew will hold on to that stage for a couple minutes and then separate from it at around the 14-minute, 58-second mark. From there, Butch and Sonny will be free flying on orbit in Starliner.
During Ascent, you'll hear Kutrick mentioning a number of abort-related milestones as Starliner moves past them. Starliner can safely abort all the way up to orbit, including off the east coast, off the coast of Newfoundland, and off the coast of Ireland. Beyond that, it'll be able to safely reach abort to orbit, just staying in space as an abort. And of course, we're hoping not to need any of those.
Request permission to begin white room closeout.
Roger, thanks, Slick. Blue team, perform toxic vapor and O2 checks when raising environmental steel and configure white room for launch.
Roger.
And Slick, if you get a annulus purge disconnect time.
And once Starliner has made it to orbit, the last major milestone before the crew begins what we call orbit ops is called the orbit insertion, or OI burn. That will move Starliner into an elliptical orbit as opposed to a more circular one.
Slick, we're calling it 1537 Zulu.
Roger.
Going from a circular orbit, which they get off of after separating from Atlas, into an elliptical orbit, and then from there Starliner will be on its way to International Space Station.
Yeah, and it sounds like the teams that have been getting Butch and Sonny ready are just about done with their job and ready to move, or getting ready to move away from the white room. But before we go back to Florida, let's check in with Rob Navius and the International Space Station Flight Control Team. Rob?
Thanks, Brandy. Just inside 44 minutes until launch, and back here in the ISS Flight Control Room, flight controllers are keeping tabs on the countdown and monitoring the work on board in the aftermath of the docking of the unpiloted Progress resupply craft earlier today at 7:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Mike Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Tracy Dyson, along with Station Commander Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos and fellow cosmonauts Nikolai Chub and Alexander Grabenkin, will form the welcoming committee when Wilmore and Williams arrive on board tomorrow. The dock timeline is elastic. That means that the number of days that Starliner could stay at the station could be pared down or expanded, depending on any further launch delays or undocking delays driven by weather conditions at the western U.S. landing sites for Starliner. One critical dock day for the Starliner crew.
Starliner Houston, cabin leak check complete. You can open the vent valve.
All right, great. That's in work.
One critical dock day for the Starliner crew will come 2 days prior to their scheduled undocking, when they load the last of the cargo items to be returned to Earth in the vehicle and will conduct onboard manual piloting proficiency that will enable them to stay sharp for their departure from the station
Copy,
and
vent
the
valve
deorbit and
open
entry
and we
events
are
that will
launching.
follow.
Thanks.
So here we are at the intersection of Cape Canaveral, Houston, and space. And aboard the station, two of the Expedition 71 crew members, Jeanette Epps and Tracy Dyson, recently took a moment to set the table for the arrival of Wilmore and Williams at their orbital destination.
Hey, Sonny and Butch, we can't wait for you guys to join us here on station. We'll be monitoring your every move on the journey, and we'll be waiting to open the hatch and welcome you to your home away from home.
Butch and Sonny, we know you've waited a while to get your ride aboard Starliner, but we know it will have been worth every minute. So from all of us on the International Space Station, Godspeed, and we'll see you soon.
As we prepare in less than an hour to launch 2 astronauts to space during this test flight, let's check back in with NASA's Antonio Jaramillo, who spoke earlier today with NASA's top administrator about this mission.
It's always an honor to be joined by NASA leadership, and joining me today is NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Administrator Nelson, can you tell us why it's so important for the space agency that we have another American space company launching from American soil?
You always want to have a backup position, and in this case, a second spacecraft. For example, when we go to the moon, we will have 2 landers. We will have a SpaceX lander, that's first, and then the Blue Origin lander. But this is a significant launch of a test of a brand new human-rated spacecraft, and it's only 6 in the history of NASA. There was Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, then the Space Shuttle, then Dragon, and now the Boeing Starliner launching for the first time with humans on board.
That's right. It's very historic, very important, and you touched on this. Why is it important in general that we do have multiple spacecraft available to send humans to space?
Because we want to explore. We are exploring in many different ways with humans as our astronauts. We go back to the moon, not just to go to the moon, but to get ready, to learn, to live, to create in order to go to Mars. But that's just one part of our space program. The science, research, the exploration of the heavens, the commercial program. We're going back to the moon later this year with a commercial lander with a NASA instrument that's going to dig to see if there is water on the South Pole. It's a whole combination of a bunch of things that are going on.
That's right. You briefly touched on that. I mean, there's already been a ton of exciting missions this year. What else can the public look forward to?
Well, in addition to those, remember the first A in NASA is aeronautics. And we're going to fly the needle-nose new supersonic. It goes faster than the speed of sound, and it's designed so that it will not make the sonic boom, so that it can fly faster than the speed of sound over populated areas. That's one. We got another aviation project to improve the fuel efficiency by 30% of a mid-range single-aisle transport aircraft like the Boeing 737.
That is fascinating. Administrator Nelson, thank you so much for joining us here today. We'll send it back over to you.
We interviewed the administrator earlier because he is currently at the ASOC with the launch team as we watch the crew access arm moving away from the Starliner spacecraft. Now, the plan is for Butch and Sonny to be docked to the ISS for at least 8 days, and after they will return to Earth with a soft touchdown in the American Southwest. there. This is video and sound from inside Starliner during its return to Earth 2 years ago as part of the Orbital Flight Test 2 mission. Its heat shield reaches 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit during re-entry, and parachutes are then deployed and the heat shield discarded to expose Starliner's airbags. The original test pilot, Rosie the Rocketeer, you see there, collected data of what astronauts might experience during landing. Starliner is the first and only American orbital crew capsule to land on land. This allows for quicker access to crew and cargo. It also makes turning the spacecraft around for future missions quicker. But Mike, Starliner can also land in water, like we were talking about earlier.
Yes, Starliner is a very capable spacecraft. Of course, we want it to land on land for the reasons you said. I love those airbags. I can't wait to ask Butch and Sunny how good those are. But in case of emergency, we can land on water. And we have a central airbag, another one.
Seconds, excess burn duration, and we'll go north to triage 6 if necessary.
The crew was just calling in. They just got some data.
Yeah, those are all good work, Starliner. Good readback. One additional item for you. In the commander's folio, you'll recall you have your 2 tablets. You've got a serial number 12 and a serial number 13. They're both ready to go, but one thing for you, serial number 12, we were looking at footage here. Its time is out of sync, so it's no issue for you till orbit. When you're on orbit, you'll want to get that tablet, serial number 12, back in sync with the time on your DUs. It's only going to influence where you see the red line and bold. So if you did have to use bold before that, go ahead and do it on 13. Otherwise, we'll just resync in flight, and we can help you with that when we get there.
All right, good words. We'll copy that, and if we have any questions when we get there, we'll give you a call. And I have confirmed that I can reach the tablets.
Houston copies.
That was Josh Kutrick giving some last-minute info to Butch and Sunny about their tablets, as well as in case of emergency where to go left or right at the end of the slide wires. But yeah, Starliner could land on water. We'd rather not, but it has that capability, and it has a different airbag configuration for that.
Yeah, the flexibility is great.
We have just about a half hour left before launch. Let's check back in with NASA's Antonia Jaramillo, who's now with someone who's been a part of Starliner since the beginning. Tony?
Thank you, Dee. For those of us just joining, we are here at OSB 2, one of the viewing locations for this launch. And joining me is Chris Ferguson, former NASA astronaut and Boeing astronaut. Chris, you've been part of Starliner since the beginning. How does it feel to be here and now get to watch it take flight with astronauts on board?
Well, given it's such a darn gorgeous day, I'm really excited. Of course, this is the culmination of probably 12 years of, just watching and working and getting involved with the development. But I was very excited to see it all come together. It's a little breezy out here, but you can't beat the weather.
Absolutely. It is a gorgeous day. Now, Chris, if you could give a piece of advice to Butch and Sunny and to all our astronauts flying on our commercial crew missions, what would it be?
Well, Butch and Sunny are pretty darn experienced. They probably don't need my advice. But what I would say, on a very first ascent of a vehicle and a re-entry, I would say take it all in, experience it. Think about what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what's staging going to be like, what's it like when the parachutes come out, because these are questions that everyone's going to know when you get back, right? We want to know, did we build a vehicle that's comfortable to fly?
Absolutely. We can't wait to know. I mean, we're all taking it in here too. Chris, it's our understanding that your fingerprints are all over the spacecraft, in particular the launch console and displays. What can Butch and Sunny expect to see and experience aboard Starliner for their flight, and how does that compare to flying the space shuttle?
Yeah, I think the idea behind the design is to make sure that the crew always has reasonable awareness of what's going on. I remember with the space shuttle days, sometimes the displays were a little archaic. You had to really almost have a graduate degree to understand exactly what you were looking at. So the idea is to make it a lot more airplane-like, because the crews are very experienced pilots and aviators, and for the next generation of Starliner astronauts to come along, we want to make it very intuitive. So we've reduced the number of switches to the bare minimum. The shuttle had 1,000. We have 25 maybe. I don't know what the right number is, but it's a very streamlined. It's capable of being flown by a single person. So there's a lot of, I would say, upgrades that make it safer, and a lot more flexible than its predecessor, the Space Shuttle.
Definitely a very impressive spacecraft. And Butch and Sunny, they're going to also perform a few manual demonstrations aboard. You also were a part of this flight test in the beginning. Can you talk to us a little bit about these manual demonstrations and just kind of the importance of why Boeing decided to have both a blend of autonomous and manual capabilities?
Yeah, there's always a sort of a contentious look, between engineers and pilots on how do I control the spacecraft. The pilots always want the ultimate ability to take over in a situation when they need to. So the Starliner flies very much like the Space Shuttle and the Apollo and the other capsule vehicles, with 2 different hand controllers where you can control all 6 degrees of freedom. You can maneuver it to an attitude if you needed to, say, charge your solar arrays or pick up a communication satellite. And they'll have the opportunity, of course, to check that out. And then there's also a deeper level of redundancy called backup mode, which is a means that the crew could manually fly the vehicle, even in the unlikely event that all the flight management computers fail. So there's a lot of redundancy, and it really is a true piloting vehicle, which is, I think, why the NASA customers really enjoy it so much.
I'm sure. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Megan D. Mike, back over to you.
All right, a quick check of the clock. We are 31 minutes and 40 seconds to liftoff of NASA's Boeing crew flight test. And right now, what you just saw on the screen there, you see Butch and Sunny. They are patiently waiting their launch inside of Starliner's spacecraft there. And then also, we did see the pad team who've been helping Butch and Sunny into their spacecraft, as well as securing the spacecraft and closing the doors. They have since left the pad, right, Mike?
Absolutely. So only thing that's left is we have a rocket and a spacecraft and 2 human beings sitting on top, getting ready for launch in 31 minutes.
Yeah, and so what we expect to hear coming up is just repeated communication checks with Capcom and Houston and with the crew. And also, this is an opportunity, right, to discuss any anomalies or resolutions, but we haven't heard anything.
Yes, I think we hopefully got that out of our system earlier, and here we go.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Per step 20, operation 60, blast engine area is clear. Roger.
They just confirmed that it is just indeed the rocket, spacecraft, and 2 human beings.
And so, yeah, so we'll hear those continued checks, and this is just an opportunity for some status updates if needed, right? This is kind of time that's built in to allow for discussion if needed.
Absolutely. We're waiting for the Earth to rotate in just the right position for that instantaneous launch window. And any anomalies we had, we got out of the way. And now everybody is
30 minutes.
double checking their data.
RC, conduct weather briefing on Channel 8 weather conference.
And the weather.
Right.
Roger. Arm control, start arm hydraulic final prep. Roger. LOX 1, perform pogo suppressor charge.
Roger.
Prop 1, perform RD-180 transducer converter calibration.
Roger.
P&E 2, perform Centaur LH2 SVV cycle test. Roger.
These are nominal countdown checks for the from the launch conductor, Doug Lebo, asking his team to do their 30-minute steps to get the rocket that much closer to ready for launch.
A historic flight test, as we've been telling you throughout this broadcast. We've been on air now since 8:15 a.m. Eastern Time to tell you about the first 2 astronauts that are going to fly in Starliner. And again, we keep seeing live views of them inside Starliner, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Sunny Williams.
RD-180 transducer calibration is complete, and the engine FIV is in a closed condition.
Roger.
L-minus 29 minutes.
Flight control, start flight control final prep.
Roger.
Now, Sunny will be the first woman to test an orbital spacecraft. Another fun fact, the last time people flew to space in an Atlas-class rocket was 61 years ago with the end of the Mercury program. CFT is the final test to certify a second commercial spacecraft to ferry astronauts to and from the space station, which really is a wonderful resource to us and many countries and also research institutions. All right, again, 28 minutes, 5 seconds to liftoff. Let's head back over to Brandy and Jim inside Mission Control in Houston.
LC, PNE2. Go ahead. Since our
Thanks,
LH2
Megan.
SVB cycle
The
tests are
crew
complete.
flight test
Roger.
flight director Mike Lammers is just about to poll the flight control team here in Houston for a go or no-go, verifying that all of Starliner systems are ready for launch today. Everything's looking good at the moment, and Lammers will use this poll to determine his own response to the final go-no-go poll by the launch conductor just before liftoff.
Once we do get into the
And
terminal
flight control,
countdown time frame,
LC.
there are
Go ahead.
Roger, do we have the temperature update complete?
Roger, the RP1 temperature update complete.
Roger. Prop 1, initiate fuel fill sequence.
Roger.
And once we're in that terminal countdown
Don't
time
say
frame,
Go ahead.
A few
Yeah,
major.
we've been discussing before the CISA temp. It's a noisy measurement. I'd like to take this to 6, get a recommendation probably to disable.
Roger. Convene the anomaly team and provide a recommendation.
We'll go. L minus 27 minutes.
And the first
LC arm control.
one of the major activities that
Go ahead.
Step 100. Arm hydraulic final preps are complete.
Roger.
One of the first activities Mike Lammer's team will be doing is transitioning Starliner from ground power to battery power. That'll come about 18 minutes before launch. We leave it about as late as possible so that the team can launch with those batteries as close to full power as possible. A few minutes later, with less than 10 minutes to go before liftoff, Starliner's ordnance will be armed, and that activates the critical systems that are needed to detach all the things from Starliner that will ultimately jettison as it climbs to orbit, and if it were needed to abort. And finally, just 1 minute and 15 seconds before launch, they'll work with the crew to activate the launch abort system, which would rocket the crew to safety in the case of an abort, or on the pad, or early in the ascent.
This is likely the last you'll hear from us until liftoff, so we are going to send you back to the team in Florida to let Megan, Dee, and Mike see us through the rest of the countdown. We'll be back once Starliner is on its way. Go Starliner.
Brandy and Jim. Okay, let's take a closer look now at Starliner. The next generation crew capsule measures 16.5 feet tall with a diameter of 15 feet. That's about the size of a mid-size SUV. It was designed to carry up to 7 astronauts or a mix of crew and cargo for missions to the International Space Station. After today's test flight, NASA will fly crews of 4 or 5 with cargo. And Starliner is also reusable up to 10 times.
Yeah, we're looking
LCOSM.
to getting...
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Per step 60, flight hazard area has been cleared. All personnel accounted for.
Roger.
All right, everybody is in place for launch. Starliner, we're looking forward to getting it certified so we can continue our missions to the International Space Station with 4 NASA astronauts. And Boeing will have the option to use Starliner to fly to other space stations and to help build the low Earth economy, low Earth orbit economy.
Hey, Mike, let's squeeze in a social question since we've invited viewers to send them to us. This is from John on YouTube asking, how did the astronaut train for this mission? It's actually a question from a 10-year-old named Maddie.
Well, hi, Maddie. Hi, John. Yeah, so we spend a lot of time practicing exactly what's going on today. We sit inside a simulator, which looks and feels like a rocket, and we push all the buttons and switches and look at our data. And sometimes they even give us these things called malfunctions, which sometimes goes wrong, and we have to think our way through it and follow our procedures to have a safe practice mission. And we do that for about 1.5 years. In this case, for us, it's a new spacecraft, so it took us 5 years, but it takes us about 1.5 years to train for new spacecraft.
Roger. Please disable line item 390.
Active.
Again, some nominal call-outs there as we march towards our instantaneous launch opportunity at 12:25 and 40 seconds.
It's really neat that we're hearing all the voice chatter back and forth from our team. I mean, what a nice thing to be able to share with everybody watching today.
Flight control final preps complete and Atlas hydraulics at standby pressure.
Roger.
And with that, let's head back over.
Go ahead.
Line item 390 has been disabled.
Roger.
Let's head back over to ULA's Dylan Rice and Boeing's Lauren Brennicke from the ASOC.
Thank you, Megan. So you may have heard just a few minutes ago the team talking about they're actually telling Butch and Sunny once they get up into space that they will need to sync their tablet. Wanted to give a little bit of a perspective on that. Basically, it's just the system clock in that tablet. You could think of it as it's just like going down to the start menu on Windows and syncing up the clock. It's been, of course, turned off for a little bit, and not connected to internet. So it's just something like you would do at home to re-establish the new time on your microwave. But Dylan, they've also heard about an anomaly on the ULA side. Not a big deal, but let's give them a little bit of perspective on that.
Sure, Lauren. So we had, we did hear a report of a noisy temperature measurement, and this particular measurement is the interstage adapter, but so that's the adapter between Atlas and Centaur. And this measurement is something that's automatically disabled when we enter our terminal count at T-minus 4 minutes. But over the past few minutes, we've observed this measurement bouncing around a little bit. So now that the vehicle is fully loaded with propellants and we've been stable for quite a while, this measurement is really not something that we rely heavily on when we're fully tanked and stable. So we're going to go ahead and disable it early rather than waiting for the automatic disable as we approach terminal count. And that just would prevent any what we'd consider to be a nuisance alarm at this point. So nothing major there. It's kind of a standard operating procedure for a noisy measurement like this.
And we are just a little over 21 minutes out from launch.
Cargo suppressor charge is complete.
Roger.
As I was saying, just a little over, right now, about 21 minutes out from launch. And I've been thinking a lot about Butch and Sunny going back to the ISS for a third time for both of them. Sunny told us that really the ISS feels like home for them. If you think about it, they've both spent a good portion of time there. They both spent 6 months in their first trip up and 6 months in their second trip up. So now going back for their third time, they're going to a place that they consider home. If you think about living somewhere for literally a year out of your life, it means a lot to you. It's very special. And Sunny even told us that...
Go ahead.
Step 90, all secondary decoms verified on RF link.
Roger.
And Sunny even told us that she cried the last time she left the ISS because she thought it would be her last time in space. So you can just imagine how special this trip will be for both her and Butch. And we are getting very close now to that moment where they are going to be headed to space. We are coming up on a call for the visors to come down. We're going to hear Capcom tell the crew to pull their visors down and to configure their suit flow.
L-minus 20 minutes.
Starliner, there's
P1, reinitiate AHP charging.
Configure
Roger.
suit flow.
RLM, verify redline monitor and event table are in the correct configuration for terminal count.
Verified.
RC, verify solar radiation, acceptable for launch.
Verified.
All right, so you saw the crew starting to pull their visors down there. That configuration is needed for proper airflow through their suit. In case of an emergency, they could pressurize their suits quickly if needed. That is the importance of having everything zipped up and ready to go. And they really enjoy the fact that these helmets are much easier to get on. They just sit back on their suits, just like a hoodie of a sweatshirt, so they're able just to pull them forward and zip them up.
Houston, Starliner, visor config complete.
Houston copies, visor config complete.
All right, they're all zipped up. And this config
All
also
communications switch to channel 1. All personnel and visitors remain in present position until launch. Maintain operational silence in the LCC.
So, Lauren, that's kind of
the LC with a terminal count briefing. If a condition exceeds the launch constraint anytime after the terminal count status check, the observer shall announce hold, hold, hold on channel 1, identify their station, and briefly state the reason for the hold.
So, Lauren, we just heard a couple of our standard pre-launch announcements. During the countdown, the individual teams, so like think of the Atlas propulsion team and the Centaur propulsion team, are off working on separate nets as they perform their functions. All that work is complete, and so essentially what that last announcement does is bring the entire team back to the primary command channel, net 1, or loop 1 as we call it, and the rest of the countdown will now be conducted on net 1,
Roger.
and we'll all kind of hear that together.
18 minutes.
Also, at this point,
Flight
our
control,
operators are
perform
going to be
launch
heads
on time
down.
verification.
Roger.
And so the only conversation in the LCC from this point forward is just going to be the working through the launch procedures. There'll be no other ancillary conversation whatsoever.
And we'll also be listening to some of those side channels that aren't public on your TV screen right now. So we'll be listening for a few polls, one that's called the Starliner Readiness Poll for terminal count. And that is one of the shorter polls. And it will be coming from the Boeing Mission Control Center, or we call it the BMCC here in Florida. The spacecraft launch conductor, Brian Gardner, will poll people in that room in charge of the propulsion system and power and many other subsystems. He will have...
And
LCP-1.
Go ahead.
AHB charging reestablish and at flight mass.
Roger.
So, Lauren, we're quickly coming to the end now of the launch vehicle pre-launch procedure, and we're just about 7